Tonight on The Best Times, find out if a reverse mortgage is right for you. We'll examine the most common sleep disorders, and then you'll meet a woman who's been an opera singer, theatrical producer, author, wife, and mother. And we'll give you tips on estate planning. Funding for The Best Times is provided by... Since 1988, the H.W. Durham Foundation has been focused on aging issues, providing grants to programs like The Best Times to enrich and improve the quality of life for our older citizens. The Best Times is the only monthly news magazine exclusively for the age 50-plus reader. Your copy is free at over 200 locations, with important stories and news you don't want to miss. The Best Times is always the best. Trezevant, a life care community, a celebration of life. The responsible decision for your well-being now and in the long term. And being responsible has never been such a hoot. TrezevantManor.org. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. For most of us, the homes we live in are our biggest investments. But it's a sad fact that bad savings habits can leave many older adults house rich and cash poor. What if there was a way to tap into the equity in your home without selling it outright? There is. It's called a reverse mortgage. Under the right set of circumstances, it can be a financial lifesaver. But it's a complex loan that's tricky to understand, with plenty of pitfalls for the unwary. Is a reverse mortgage right for you? Let's take a class in Reverse Mortgage 101.
If you've been thinking about financial options for your retirement, and maybe how to provide some real security for you and your family, you really ought to consider a reverse mortgage with AAG.
You've probably seen these TV commercials with former Senator Fred Thompson extolling the virtues of reverse mortgages. Even the Fonz thinks it's the right plan for you.
Now call the number on your screen and let one reverse mortgage help you live a better retirement. Does that sound too good to be true?
It's not free money. It implies that it's just something that everyone should do, that almost you'd be foolish not to do.
Reverse mortgages have been around since 1990, but it's only in the last half-dozen years or so that they've gained a degree of popularity. Let's start with a basic definition of a reverse mortgage.
It's exactly the opposite of a regular mortgage. Instead of you making payments and every month you have more equity in your home, you're getting money, and there are different ways you can get the money, but you're getting money and they're charging you interest on that money. You don't ever have to pay it back as long as you live in the home. But the equity in your home is decreasing every month.
Here's how it works. You must be 62 or older and own your home or have substantial equity in it to qualify. The loan amount will be based on your home's appraisal and your age. In general, the older you are, the greater the loan amount will be, but don't expect to get your home's full value. Over 90% of reverse mortgages are HUD-sponsored HECM loans, which require counseling by third parties. With a certificate from the counselor, you can close on the loan and choose a form of disbursement. You can get a lump sum, installment payments based on a schedule you determine, a line of credit, or a combination of these. Not all loans offer all of these options. As long as you continue to live in your home, maintain it, and pay all taxes and insurance, you don't make any monthly mortgage payments. The loan balance isn't due until all deed owners have vacated the house for whatever reason. In a normal scenario, the lender would sell the home to pay off the loan, or your heirs could buy the house using a traditional mortgage. It's a complex process, but it comes with one big advantage for a cash-strapped homeowner.
The advantage is you can get money.
It's an opportunity
for liquidity when they are house rich and cash poor.
The disadvantage is, number one, while you continue to own your house, you are accumulating a debt, and that's, that's a cost.
That's a key point to remember. This is a loan, which means it accrues interest and comes with fees and expenses. And tapping into your home's equity doesn't come cheap.
It is extremely expensive, and if you really were to take a look at your real cost of money, it's extraordinarily expensive.
The bank is taking a guess on how this is all going to work out. And that's what causes the fees to be higher than they are in a regular mortgage.
HUD has changed their HECM product recently to lower some of these fees, but the amount of money you'll get from your house has also been lowered. And that percentage is dependent on your home and your age.
The whole key to the reverse mortgage is how much the home is going to appraise for. They're never going to get the full value of the home. It's always going to be a percentage. It's usually, depending on age, somewhere between about 55 and 65% of the value of the home.
So the older you are, the more money you'll get out of your house. But the recent trends run counter to that financial logic.
20 years ago, this was something that people did really late in life. The average age was 77. So now that the typical borrower wants a lump sum and they're 62 years old.
My recommendation is you avoid it until the last possible moment, and I certainly would be concerned doing it before age 75.
Anytime you're looking at a reverse mortgage, if there's any way to wait, the longer you wait, the better off you are.
Because of the complex nature of reverse mortgages, HECM loans require counseling, and recent changes to the rules require face-to-face, third-party counseling.
The counselor really tries to make all this rational, try to really outline the upsides and the downsides of it.
They see the commercials on TV and they think, oh, I can get some money and do all these wonderful things, and that may be true. But there are costs involved with doing it, one, and two, if, as many people are, planning to use their home as something to leave to their children as an inheritance or a legacy, however you'd want to put it, that's going to get in the way of that.
So who is a good candidate for a reverse mortgage?
If you're 75 and you're in a house that's just fine, but it's a big house, it needs a $10,000 roof on it, and you don't want to be making another $100, $200 a month payment, this could be the perfect thing.
Census Bureau statistics show that 36% of Americans haven't saved anything for retirement. And the average savings for a 50-year-old is less than $44,000. Given those sobering statistics, aging baby boomers may have to give reverse mortgages a second look.
You really need to investigate. You need to look into it real closely. I mean, it can be a lifesaver. It can keep people in their homes. But at the same time, it can mess things up also.
I think there will be a number of people who will worry more about what they're doing for dinner tonight than getting out of debt and saving for their retirement. And those people probably will be almost forced into using something like a reverse mortgage. And I think a good percentage of them will regret it. Some of them it will work well for, and I just don't know which are which.
For more details on reverse mortgages, go to the website of the Department of Housing and Urban Development or call their toll-free number. We spend about a third of our lives asleep. Statistics reveal we also spend about 7 years of our lives tossing and turning in bed trying to get to sleep. And as we age, our sleep patterns change. Stay awake for this next segment and you'll learn how to get a good night's sleep. How common are sleep disorders in older people?
More than 50% of people had some form of sleep disturbance, either difficulty falling to sleep, difficulty maintaining sleep, or feeling refreshed after having had a night's sleep.
What are the most common sleep disorders?
The big disorders basically are the insomnias, the primary insomnias, difficulty falling to sleep, difficulty maintaining sleep, and then feeling fatigue and that sort of thing after an allegedly good night's sleep. And then there are obstructive sleep apnea issues, which is frequent awakening because of upper airway obstruction and reduction of oxygen levels, which incidentally can be very highly related to hypertension and worsening of a congestive heart failure. So it's a real medical problem. Restless leg syndrome and periodic limb movement syndromes, they're highly prominent in the elderly.
Do sleep patterns change as we age?
As we age, our stage 3 and 4 sleep diminishes dramatically, so that it is only a few minutes every night. And we maintain times of REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, and we have much more awakenings. So as you get older, you do need a quieter, less obtrusive environment, and the most important thing I do as a primary care physician is counsel people on sleep hygiene.
What is sleep hygiene?
Don't eat before you get ready to go to sleep. Don't exercise right before you get ready to go to sleep. Avoid caffeine, avoid alcohol within an hour or two before you're going to go to sleep. A quiet room, relaxation techniques prior to going to bed, and most importantly, probably than anything, is developing a routine prior to going to sleep.
Do sleeping pills work?
It's best that those be used very short term, and their effectiveness, while many people swear by them, I just can't get to sleep without them, doctor. When you objectively look at their effectiveness, they're only a few minutes difference between people if you give them sleeping pills or you don't give them sleeping pills. But I think that the psychological dependence on them is certainly real.
Do I need 8 hours of sleep?
A statistical norm is just that, and any individual, they have to find their own sweet spot for their sleeping. And so giving a number oftentimes creates a degree of anxiety, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to get up and go to work tomorrow, and I'm not going to get my 6 hours. I'm not going to get my 8 hours. Now they get anxious about it. It jacks up their adrenal system. They get nervous. It impedes their sleep. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
When should you seek treatment for a sleep disorder?
If it's been a month, it's basically been a month, and you've consistently not had good sleep for a month, and you're having somnolence and difficulty functioning, I would probably talk to my doctor about that.
For more information on getting a good night's sleep, go to the website of the National Institutes of Health. In Alice Goldate's book, In Search of Truth and Beauty, she writes, "My lifelong quest has been the search for truth and beauty. I have been warned that this is a dangerous road to travel, but the rewards have made my life one of value." In her life, Alice has been an author, a poet, a patron of the arts, a talented opera singer, and a loving wife and mother. Let me introduce you to Alice Goldate. This is Alice Goldate singing Una Macchia from Verdi's Macbeth. She began voice lessons at age 15. She married her husband Jim, a talented interior designer, when she was just 18. And her aspirations of opera stardom were overtaken by her role as wife and mother to her 2 children. She stopped singing for nearly a decade, until, at age 36, she auditioned for the initial performance of the Memphis Opera.
But they were doing 2 operas, Tannhäuser and Hansel and Gretel. Well, I never even thought about Hansel and Gretel because I was 36 years old. The next day my phone rang, and it was Robert Kirkham, who was then heading the opera. And he said, is this Alice Goldate? Yes, this is. Well, how would you like to sing Hansel and Hansel and Gretel? And I said, do you know how old I am? And he said, I don't care how old you are. I know how you look and sound on stage, and you're my perfect Hansel.
Alice's rejuvenated opera career lasted for nearly 20 years.
I sang until I was age 60. I would feel when I stood on stage that my arms were just around my audience, and the love that emanated was so beautiful, so fantastic. And I didn't have that anymore. It was gone. But in January of the following year, I was just here by myself in the house, and all of a sudden, I just started thinking, and I grabbed a shorthand notebook, picked it up, and this is what I wrote. This was the first thing I ever wrote. Caught up in the busy trivia of every day, man rushes headlong into oblivion. Only when he is alone and quiet does the inner rhythm begin to play. Only then do the senses come closer to realization. Only then does he hear the soft wind.
With the publication of Listen, I Hear a Soft Wind, Alice began a writing career. She's published 3 books, 1 book of poetry, a collection of stories, and a volume of philosophy. Writing filled a creative need, but nothing could replace music. So Alice returned to the stage, this time as a producer. She produced concerts at Brooks Art Gallery for 3 years before her husband planted the seed of an idea in her head.
My husband said to me one night, Alice, do you realize that you've got 4 major Metropolitan Opera singers from Memphis? I think you ought to have Memphis Night at Kennedy Center. And I said, oh, that's a wonderful idea.
Using her connections at Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., Alice presented Memphis Night at Kennedy Center, featuring Mignon Dunn, Nancy Tatum, and Ruth Welting, accompanied by the National Symphony Orchestra.
And it was an enormous success. It had the elite of Washington, and Gann made the front pages of both newspapers, the Star and the Post, and it was nationally televised. So from that, let me see, the next thing that happened is that I met Baryshnikov.
With her powers of persuasion, Alice brought Baryshnikov and the New York City Ballet Troupe to Memphis annually for the next 10 years. Music, she says, is my soul. And she looks back on her life, on stage and off, and realizes that she's had the best of 2 lives.
Eleanor Steber was probably one of the greatest American sopranos that ever lived. And she was my mentor, and she was here in Memphis visiting me and working with me. And she was sitting in my living room, and of course I have photographs all around of my family and my life. And she said, she started crying, and I said, Eleanor, why are you crying? She said, oh, Elise, to think that I could have had all this. And I said, Eleanor, I wouldn't waste 1 moment on you. I said, while you were singing for the crowned heads of Europe, I was washing diapers. I said, you just can't have it all. And so as I matured, I knew that I had made very wise choices because I kept my family together.
Do you have a will? What's the difference between a will and a living trust? And why should you appoint a power of attorney? These are just some of the elements of estate planning, a process that provides for the succession of your property according to your wishes. And it's not so much about the value of your property as it is about the value your property has to you and your heirs. What is estate planning?
Estate planning is really just the process that a person goes through to make sure that their affairs are going to be handled the way they want them to be in the case of their incapacity or death. Sometimes people think it's only death, but it also applies if you're alive, but you no longer have the ability to handle your affairs yourself.
What is the advantage of having an estate plan?
The biggest beneficiaries are going to be the children, mainly the ones who are going to be in charge of taking care of mom and dad as they get older or handling the estate after death. I tell a lot of my clients, you're not really doing this for yourself, you're doing this for your kids.
Do I need a will, and what happens if I die without one?
Everyone should have a will. Everyone should also have powers of attorney as well. Each state has their laws of intestate succession. In Tennessee, if you die and you aren't married, then your estate is just going to pass to your children in equal shares. If you are married, your estate will pass 1/3 to your spouse, 2/3 to your children. If you have more than one child, it'll go half and half if you have one child. And that's where some people, that's why another reason I recommend that everybody have a will, because most of the time if you're married and you pass away, you would want your estate to pass to your spouse. But if you don't have a will, it's not going to go that way. It's going to go partly to your children, partly to your spouse. If you want to leave something to charity, or if you want to leave something to another family member, or maybe a friend, you have to do that through a will. You can't do that through the state law.
What is a power of attorney?
It's simply a document that you name a person, sometimes called an agent or an attorney in fact, to stand in your shoes if you're not able. If you become incapacitated, if you're in a coma, or you get to the point where you have dementia and you're not able to handle these functions yourself, you can name a family member, spouse, to stand in your shoes.
What is a living trust?
What it does is you transfer your assets into the trust. And if you become incapacitated or at your death, then your successor trustee, whom you name, can then take over those assets that are in the trust. And the advantages of it are you can avoid probate. And again, a will doesn't take effect until your death. So if you become incapacitated, then your successor trustee can step in and start managing your affairs immediately.
I'm not wealthy. Do I need an estate plan?
Everyone has an estate, and a lot of the times it's more important for people who don't have a lot of wealth to make sure their estate plan is structured correctly than the other way around, because the stakes are a lot higher. If you have a $100,000 estate, a $10,000 mistake means a lot more than if you have $1 million estate. So estate planning is for everybody, not just the wealthy.
For a good overview and advice on estate planning, go to the website of AARP or contact your attorney. Want more information about life after 50? Go to our website, wkno.org/besttimes. And email your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. Thanks for watching. I'm Chris Hardaway. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by Trezevant, a life care community, a celebration of life. The responsible decision for your well-being now and in the long term. And being responsible has never been such a hoot. TrezevantManor.org. The Best Times is the only monthly news magazine exclusively for the age 50-plus reader. Your copy is free at over 200 locations, with important stories and news you don't want to miss. The Best Times is always the best. Since 1988, the H.W. Durham Foundation has been focused on aging issues, providing grants to programs like The Best Times to enrich and improve the quality of life for our older citizens.